Welcome to another video, guys. Happy to see you here. Happy to be here myself. Welcome to the Ideal Auto Factory. Today we're going to be talking about the PDK, the professional drift kit, and all that there is about it pretty much, because it's fully built now and I've been kind of holding back on the video, just kind of feeling it out and giving a good driving experience first before I came back and gave a full in-depth review of the kit, fully built, box stock. So, keep got first, let's get into the video. Now before I go too far into details, I do want to bring up first and foremost, this chassis comes out of China. Now, it coming out of China means that tariffs are now in place to where this chassis is now not necessarily unobtainable, but costs a lot more than it would normally. And right around May, I was able to get one extra brought into the States for another RC drifter, and it made it fine. So I understand that this may not be a chassis that is obtainable right now, but I am working on ways to have the chassis come through without any issues. And therefore, we're just going to say for now, this chassis kit isn't really on the table as far as getting it for the price that it is basically retailed for. Now, the full option version of the PDK is $755 shipped to your door. That is top dollar, every option you can think of. Do I know what the price is for a base kit, just the box? I don't. And I apologize. This chassis itself still has all of the upgrades left to be put on, and I am running it just the way it comes from out of the box, minus the basically all the other options right now. So what you see here minus the bumper in the front is what you would get with the lesser priced option, meaning non-full option version. I don't recommend getting just the base version, mainly because I feel like over time you're going to spend more than that on the chassis in general. So go ahead and get the full option one and upgrade as you go, especially with the fact that the company is way out there. KKPIT is not in the States, so getting parts piece by piece may not be something that just is economical. Now that all of that is out of the way, let's get started on the full chassis setup. As I lift this up, you can see that there is a slide rack that I discussed in the front end video. Now that it is fully built, this front bulkhead basically houses the front upper arms, the lower arms, the slide rack, the front shock tower, and also the body mounts for the front as well. Everything is on a metal bulkhead here in the front. And the rear, it's on a bulkhead as well. It's a 3-gear transmission. Basically, it is all fixed. There's no adjustability here. You can't run low mount, high mount kind of thing. All you get is a kind of floating motor system here, and basically your same setup. Upper, lower arms are everything's all on this bulkhead, and then there's a lower deck and upper deck to connect everything together. This chassis is very unique, but also simple, and what I can say about it right now is with the top deck, you don't get much side to slide flex, if any at all. And of course, it will not bow because it's obviously 2 pieces. Make sure it doesn't go up and down. So flex is almost non-existent. The dampers are full aluminum. The bearings are well built, and it comes in a, how do I consider it? It feels very OEM plus from the factory. The bearings are very tight fitting. The machining on everything is very precise. And the anodizing is very nice. I did get mine in all black because I wanted something to be a lot more serious, not really show offy, but more of a clean look. And I do apologize for my allergies if I am sounding a little different. I just am trying to make sure that I don't sneeze all crazy in front of you and start doing a whole bunch of random noises. So here we go. What you missed from me building everything else out is, of course, this whole rear bulkhead. And don't you worry, we're going to go into the manual and I will show you everything and how it's designed. But pretty much you get the, this is a custom ESC mount because the stock one is very much an afterthought. And you are unable to basically take the ESC off and get to the quick change differential by way of keeping the ESC here stuck to it. You have to actually take the ESC off the tape, then get to the carbon fiber plate, and nobody's trying to do all of that. So Ramon, a well-known drifter and owner of the PDK, he made this ESC mount, and it's a file that he has, and basically it was a better option. So I opted to do that. I had it on my old PDK, so I just brought it over to this one. But you do get a quick change diff. There's no bumper that you can put on the rear. The axles and everything else, it's all this is basically get plus or minus one. I mean 0 or plus 1 on the toe here in the rear. 3-gear gearbox, like I said before. Non-adjustable motor position. ESC goes in the rear or in the front. You can sit it on the top deck. Obviously, I chose for the rear mount. And also, there is a kind of like a this is a carbon fiber mount here. It's not aluminum, so very much a lightweight setup back here. And you get 3 different adjustable positions for the camber link in the rear. But again, this chassis, all bearings. Bearings are everywhere. And we're going to get into the manual soon. I just want to point out that with all of the carbon fiber, with all of the aluminum, already this chassis is very high caliber for me. Because if you get it out of the box, I think it has to be somewhere in the $400 range for it to come into the box stock with no upgrades. But with all that being said, the aluminum dampers, the basically like you already get body mounts, and then you from there you got the springs are set up pretty well. The stock settings are meant for a very precise drift, but not something that you got a little extra room to play around with. It's very much a point and shoot kind of thing, not kind of flicking, just let the car slide wherever it wants to. I don't think it's up there with RDX out of the box, meaning you just get in and you can drive. I mean, if you look at the Ackerman here, if you look at that, it does not go full 90. It can't, because the steering stoppers stop it from going full 90. And so not having a full 90 degrees of throw out of the box because your steering stopper stops that, it's not necessarily a negative. It's just that you don't have as much drift angle that you can get. And so therefore it's not a full 10 out of 10, but it is definitely worth all the money that it's offering. I'm going to stop rambling now, and let's go ahead and get into the manual so I can show you some of the hang-ups or the stopping points for me, and then basically give you all of the features that comes with the kit. So the PDK, as you already know, I've went through bag A, but I haven't gone through bag B or C with you all. So we're going to skip ahead to the second bag, and this is where the gearbox gets assembled. Now the gearbox has bearings on both sides. There's an idler gear, a top shaft, you know, the simple stuff. It's a 3-gear gearbox. We know how this works. Putting this together, the idler gear was fine. But if you notice here, there's a notch right there. There's a notch. And this part over here, the actual bulkhead, has a flat spot in it. So this basically like shaft just slides in and then it holds it all together. So it's not just rounded. It actually has a little flat spot on it. So you can only put it in one way. And with the shim right here for the top shaft, this whole thing slides in and it does not budge. It is perfectly centered. Over here, the next spot, you can see right there, this whole assembly here, it was a little rough for me. You have to use a little bit of muscle to pull it all together. And then when you get to this part, this is an O-ring. 37518 is an O-ring. And you put that O-ring in there, and that allows this piece right here to float and kind of give you like a rearward kick to the torque and everything like that. So outside of that, that is pretty much the gearbox, assembly there. And then over here, you put the spur gear holder, I should say. And then the motor mount, it goes right here. And of course, everything goes together. Now, if you look, I chose the 83T instead of the 88. And it doesn't come with the pinion gear. And then, of course, that's what it looks like fully assembled. You've seen it on mine. And then now we'll go to the next page. And then we're on to the actual gear, basically gear diff. Now, this one's a little different, okay? If you look, there's no O-rings. So since there's no O-rings, technically speaking, there should be no actual like field diff, the traditional way to do it, like a yoke mount. Nope. So basically you have your axle drive cups here. Again, the same little slotted, you see that little flat spot right there? I can't zoom in anymore. It doesn't look like. So that same flat spot right there. And there's a flat spot in this gear as well. But pretty much you put this bearing on and you put that one on and they go into the housing here. And I highly recommend putting this bearing on first. Put this bearing on the housing, then put the smaller bearings because this bearing does not fit over this drive cup. So after you do that, please pay attention. I did not see this till later on, but thread locker on the little small screw that holds all of this together. And that's just one side. And you basically do the same for the other side. Please put this big bearing on 10154 Bravo. Put that onto this before you do anything else. This should be the first thing. And of course, thread locker on there and it all goes together. Now over here, this is one of the reasons why having the full upgraded, full option version is best. This part apparently breaks over time, so nobody uses it, and then they just use the CNC version of this. But if you look here, here's the gears, and here's the whole mechanism. Now you get a 90 degree, 60 degree, 120 degree, and 30 degree, I believe. Which one does what? I don't know, but I just kept the stock ones in there and I used the CNC, basically gear holder, and these two caps, they go together and then you put it all together with the 3 screws here. And then you have a full diff with the quick change mechanism in the rear. Now, onto this part, nothing major here. I honestly couldn't tell you anything bad about this part. Again, you can either opt for the basically like rear ESC flat mount or angled at a 45 degree. But if you look, if you ever want to take this out, if you ever want to take your ESC off so you can get to the, the 4 screws over here. If you ever want to get to these 4 screws again, you have to take this screw out right here to move the ESC bracket out the way. Or you take the ESC off the plate because this is the screw that holds the plate on. there's nothing from the bottom, which would be the easiest way to get to everything. And of course, if you flip this bracket onto the bottom, you don't get the same angles. You actually get a 45-degree angle going this way. So not that way, but this way, which makes no sense. So this is definitely one of those afterthoughts, not very user-friendly. So thanks to Ramon for basically doing the wonderful 3D printed ESC mount for rack here, which flips this whole thing upside down and allows you to basically get to your diff as easily as possible. Now, over here, this is all pre-assembled. You put your gearbox onto the rear, and over here, this is your arms. So the arms, they go together. You can do the left one and the right one. Please pay attention to everything. The bearings, they go in, and of course, based on how tight you tighten this screw is how tight all of this is together with this arm. So, the whole free floating stuff where, you don't want any of your stuff to bind. If you tighten the screw too tight, this will bind. But over time, what happened to mine was I didn't tighten this all the way. So I had a loose rear end. And so I was able to tighten it a little bit more once I was driving it for a little bit and the wheels stopped wobbling. Here again, we have bearings, 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 bearings. Bearings are everywhere in this chassis, and it's really cool to see that. And so those are your lower arms, more bearings, pretty much self-explanatory here, but oh man, it's just wonderful how many bearings there are, because it makes such a smooth chassis and a strong chassis, to be honest with you. With the way this plastic is, it definitely reminds me of the RDX kind of like graphite resin. It's not that stretchy resin, or malleable, I should say. This is the rear, basically like toe block, and you can go with a +1 on the toe, or you can go with 0 if you flip the little pieces, the little inserts here. The battery holder is, I'll show you that once we get out of the manual and the screen recording, but the battery holder is pretty self-explanatory. I do like that there are little dowels that go into this spot, so you can actually just screw it in without it rotating on you. Over here, this is the top deck or top bracing right here. And it was cool because the chassis had a lot of flex before you put this top bracing on, but every part of the bracing made the chassis stiffer. So I guess if you wanted to tune something, you could take this bracing off or take that bracing off, and you're just left with 2 side rails, and you'd have a different kind of flex going on. The build quality on the dampers is very high up there. I like the UC dampers, and of course the overdose dampers are really awesome as well, but these are the best bang for buck dampers that I have ever seen, because number one, it doesn't have E-clips, and we all know E-clips fly everywhere except for onto the shaft that we're trying to squeeze them on. So no E-clips. You have the shaft right here. You have a washer, a piston, as you can see, and then the lock nut. Now with that, you go to the bottom. What's on the bottom? You have a little spacer for the O-ring here, your actual O-ring, the stock one, not a blue O-ring from Yokomo. No, the stock O-ring that comes in it. Then you have this shaft guide, then the locking collar, basically, what locks the bottom and closes everything up. And then, of course, the ball cup that will go onto the shaft. So yeah, standard damper, put your oil in, and then you got your diaphragm up top. It's simple. It does not tell you what to do here. And the springs that come with the kit do not tell you what kind of springs they are and which ones should be used for what. So you're kind of just left to your own devices there. Apparently all 4 springs are the same spring rate though, or stiffness, I should say. I opted not to use this bumper. I used the aftermarket one. And then, as you can see, the dampers are put on very slant. And I'm not a huge fan of that. So that is one of the first things I'll change. But after that, put your wheels and tires on, put your battery in, and you can drive it. Big shout out to Hobbywing, because that is clearly a Hobbywing ESC. But yes, you get your setting sheet, and then that is the end of the manual. So if you look right here, there's a steering stopper here, and that steering stopper hits this. I would love if this steering stopper would have hit here, because it's a lot more room for clearance, and therefore you can rotate that closer to 90 degrees. If this steering stopper doesn't stop further out, it actually stops further in. But outside of that, I haven't changed any of the settings. The camber is exactly what it said it was supposed to be from the box. And all of these measurements are there as well. The axles are unadjustable, but they're not with a pin and a hex. It's all one piece. And they like to do a little shake, but that's pretty much it. Let me get out of this and then we can continue on. Now let's go over some of these quirks here. I'm gonna go ahead and bring this down. We're going to be looking at this chassis a little closer here. One thing I want to point out is this whole, that's me doing that with my hands. I'm trying to duplicate this, but there it is. This one's pretty bad. So that axle in there, it is moving back and forth. But this one over here, it's moving back and forth as well. Maybe I can change the spacers, but the wheels move in and out a lot compared to the rear. And so that is with the, basically you gotta screw the knuckle in from the rear in a certain spacer. But you can see there, it moves a whole lot. My wheels are tightened, obviously, with the nylon locking nut. So there's one little quirk there, I guess. The steering rack, the slide rack itself is very smooth, but it also can lift if you don't have it tight enough. So please make sure you tighten it up enough with the set screw and the spring. Other than that, the front, I already showed you the acronym. You already know for a fact what I'm going to do here. I'm going to straighten these shocks out. So I'm going to put spacers up here and straighten the dampers out. There's a thumb screw right here that is literally not of use because of how this whole piece is not threaded. So this battery piece right here is not threaded, and therefore this is very hard to twist. So you got to just kind of pull the battery stopper out. Hey, you live with it. The shocks in the rear, they are slant as well, and I'm going to bring the bottoms in some more. There are screws right here, the screws that I was talking about for adjusting that free play here. So I don't have any more free play, but that screw right there, if you all can see it, there's a screw right here. And that screw, if it's a little loose, it'll, the rear will be able to move a little bit. The chassis drives exactly where I want it to go. The only thing is, once you get a little too much angle, it will either wash out or it will just suck into the inside apex of a drift because there's not enough angle to keep it going backwards or left. There's not enough angle to keep it going in the direction you want it to go. So other than that, I don't have any issues with this chassis. I actually like how smooth it is. I actually like how refined it is. I like how simple, meaning there's not too many features. You got the motor, that's the feature. Can't adjust the motor though. You have a slide rack. They tell you exactly where to put everything. The knuckles are fine. The stock settings are fine. There's just a little more to squeeze out of it. Just a little more. You know, okay, I'm going to change the way the shocks are. Yeah, I didn't talk about camber at all. I didn't talk about camber gain or anything, but none of that is an issue on this chassis. The springs are fine. I'm not running any oil in these right now, just enough for lubrication, but that's because I don't even know what the chassis needs as far as dampening is concerned. But the springs are going to hold up the chassis. It's running Accuvance, everything. So motor and ESC, and then Futaba for the gyro and the, remote. And I drove this on a different chassis with these same electronics. And honestly, the only difference that I can feel is on the other chassis, I had a little more front end angle. So therefore it was able to drift deeper. This has a little more adjustability than that other one, so I'm looking forward to really dialing everything in. But the PDK is a choice that I'm glad I made, and at the price point it has everything I need. It's definitely not as much as a Shark. It's almost half the price. It's definitely not a all around just work of art, but it is very simplistic, and to me that is art. When you can simplify a chassis to be very much performance driven with the least amount of show and bells and whistles as possible. My favorite part and also the least favorite part about this chassis is that it is running on bearings everywhere. So basically there's no room for you to ever have any binding on the chassis at all. But that also means you got to make sure the bearings are seated properly. You got to make sure that you're using the right bearings in the right places and the spacing is there. It's like a give and take, but also that over-engineered or overbuilt quality of this chassis is, I appreciate it. And as you can see on those front wheels again, all it is a matter of finding the right spacing, and then all of that play goes away. I have upgraded knuckles. I have upgraded everything, and I haven't even put them on yet. I feel like nobody should be buying a chassis and then just automatically buying all the upgrades because you might not even need them. And you never learn what's doing what. So, PDK. I'm sorry I don't have the actual build video of the gearbox in the rear. It was just a moment that I kind of took and wanted to learn what was going on, but there's nothing fancy about building this chassis other than the fact that the screws and everything is separated. So I wanted to speed up and build it, and I really couldn't because I had to find the bags with the right stuff in it every time for each part of the process. But hey, that's how it be sometimes. I want to stop rambling and basically send this video off. This is definitely a good choice for a drift kit, and it is also a solid answer for just having all of the options at a reasonable price compared to some of these other things that are, in the thousands of dollars before you even get electronics. That being said, this is the PDK. Basically no flash, no frills. Very good setup. The axles are not labeled with any length. There's not much else to it. So thank you all for watching. If you haven't already, click subscribe, like the video. Let me know if you want a PDK. Also, comment below if you have one and what's your best or favorite feature or favorite tuning characteristic, favorite thing about the car in general. And we'll talk in the comments. Keep God first. I'll catch you on the next video. Peace.